Hello, it's Paul Green with another one of our Focus On panels. We're one short today. Normally we have a lineup of three, but the person that was due to come unfortunately is away, and I couldn't find a stunt double. So you're just going to have to put up with two panelists today, but I'm sure that will be absolutely fine. So before we crack on with our topic of the day, do you want to introduce yourselves and let the audience out there that may be watching or listening who you are? Mari.
Hi, I'm Mari from Tom on Team Coaching. I'm a team performance coach and mentor for leadership, and I work with primarily growing SMEs who are growing their teams and help them achieve more.
Thank you very much. And Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie Sherman. I mentor and coach consultants who've come out of employment set up on their own and joined the world of the small business owner. I'm also the chair of the Green Business Network, which is a not-for-profit membership organisation, which is geared up to help small businesses tackle their sustainability agenda.
Hence the topic, Jackie. You did influence my choice of topic. So what we're going to be looking at today is why is sustainability important in the small business world, or not? That might be a viewpoint that comes across. We should have to find out. And in terms of sustainability, in terms of business sense, I've just sort of pulled something off the internet that sort of gives a context of what it is. Basically, a sustainable business or green business is an enterprise that has minimal negative impact or potentially a positive effect on the global or local environment, community, society, or economy. So that's generally what we're going to be talking about. So let's just switch back to that for a minute. So let's kick off. So Jackie, I'll start with you as you just mentioned that you're involved very much so in sustainability of business. So is it the right question? Why is sustainability important to small business world, or would you slant it in a different way?
Well, I suppose the first point I'd make is that I think sustainability is everybody's responsibility. And, you know, if we're going to put right the wrongs that we've inflicted on this planet, we have to take action at all sorts of different levels, both from sort of political and government levels down to us as individuals. And sitting in the middle of that is the business world, and particularly the small business world, the smaller organisations, who I think have the toughest time in putting some of this into practice.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mari? What are your thoughts? Is it important? Where do you come from in terms of the viewpoint?
I do think it's important. The businesses that I've been involved with have very much had it on their agenda. Having said that, though, I have, I suppose, varying live experiences of how that has been implemented, the difficulties involved. And also, I suppose, because I'm more about people, there is a sustainability issue with regard to community and how a business impacts a community, which I think often gets forgotten when we talk about sustainability or the green agenda, I guess.
Okay, and Jackie, in your experience, what are some of the hurdles that small businesses come up against if they're looking at this as a topic? What would get in the way of them implementing things?
A lot of it is knowledge and time. I think is probably the two sticking points for people. I think maybe people have set up running their own business. They haven't got the resources to have a big sustainability team, as say a corporate organisation or a government would have. So, everybody within a small business is pretty focused on producing whatever it is they're in business for. So, adding in something new is always difficult. And the other side is just having the knowledge. A lot of this, there are some simple things that can be done, but when you get really into the deeper levels, it's having the cross-discipline knowledge that's necessary. Solutions often come out of people coming together in different ways to innovate. So, and small businesses don't have that resource. So it's time and knowledge, I think, a knowledge of what's possible.
Okay, and what about from your point of view, Mara? Have you seen anything in terms of businesses you've been involved with, in terms of putting something into place on this in this area?
Well, money. If I'm honest, for small businesses, a lot of the time that has historically been the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in 2006, 2007, the business I was in, we started to introduce environmentally sound chemicals for use in care homes and nurseries. Lot of interest, huge amount of buy-in. Beginning, we were just starting to get things going, and then we had the financial crash in 2008, and people just stopped buying them, full stop, not interested. And it, and it was a very difficult decision to make as a business. It's like, well, this is when we should really be pushing forward with these things because we can get ahead of the curve. But to push forward with something you're not selling is very difficult. And to make that stance at a time when the majority of people are just saying, give me the cheapest option because that's all I can afford. And, ultimately we are going into a similar situation now. The irony, I guess, of the current situation is those who took the energy jump in terms of using more sustainable energy sources will be laughing a little bit harder now, if they're generating their own electricity through solar panels or giving back to the grid. That will massively impact the bills that are going to be increased for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jackie, on that topic, with the energy crisis that we're facing, which have a knock-on effect to small business as well, do you think that it is something that's going to refocus or come more on the agenda?
I think it makes a really good point, Mary, isn't it? Because those people who've made the investment, and money is about getting the right investment into the business and the right mindset. Those people, like say, are in a better position now, and seeing benefits which aren't just environmental sustainability benefits, but real business benefits. In terms of the bottom line, isn't it? If you're producing your own energy, as you put it, Murray, you're laughing. Perhaps not very loudly, because there will be other places where that lack of investment will show. But I think it makes the point that it's about becoming sustainable. Has real benefits for the business now. It's not just an add-on. I think there's a danger of it looking that way. Also, I think there are opportunities for investment, for doing things differently. One of the points that when I was looking at this was sort of thinking, there's a lot of pressure, sort of top-down pressure from government with regulations, plastic tax, waste management, all sorts of different pressures coming down at business. There's also pressures coming up from consumers who are looking for the sustainable products and things, and business can see itself as caught in the middle, or it can react and say, this is what my customers want, so this is what I've got to find a way of producing. So I think there are opportunities as well as costs. I think sometimes a small business struggles with that, because at first you've got to invest before you get the return. So I think investment and ethical investments are really important. part of this agenda as well.
Yeah. So, Mari, what are your thoughts? You know, with the current cost of living crisis and increasing energy prices and the potential for going into recession. Do you think the sustainability topic will be put on a back burner, or do you think people will continue to look at it and drive it forward in their businesses?
Well, you've got to hope that people will keep going forward. As I rather glibly said earlier, I think those who have made some changes already will be feeling, those who run electric cars, for example, when petrol prices were ridiculous, we're also feeling slightly smug. So I do think that it is important. One of the things that I think for small businesses, well, there's two things really. One is networking, which is gifting Jackie an opportunity to talk about the Green Business Network, but also we implemented the ISO standard 14001, which is the environmental standard for business. And well, I did, and that was really helpful. Initially, it was very legislation heavy, I think is probably the best way to describe it, but it has evolved now and become much more workable, much more part of the business operations, and that helps to educate the business on areas where they can make improvements, I think. But going back to the networking, with doing the ISO standard, you have to look at your suppliers, you have to look at your customers, you have to look at where they are coming from, what their standpoint is on these things. So you are networking with them as well. So it is about talking to people about the issues and whether or not there can be changes. I think that's a real opportunity for businesses, and there are savings to be made without a doubt. But you have to, the initial reaction is, oh, it's going to cost me more because it's coded environmental or sustainable. But actually, if you can work with your suppliers and your customers, talk about different options, have a greater understanding, as Jackie said, it is sometimes about education, then I think hopefully people will continue. I think, Extinction Rebellion, that it is very much on the agenda for people. It's just, we have so many battles to fight at the moment, just where it's going to end up in terms of priority.
I think that's the question, isn't it? Is because people get, in times like this, people get caught in the here and now, don't they? It's difficult to look forward to spending time and effort and your hard-earned cash in investing in something that might give you a return in a few years' time. It's getting through this year probably is more where people get to when times get tough. So, but I think we need to put the emphasis on what can be done, and some of it isn't big and expensive and complicated. Some of it is quite simple, like switching off lights. So I think it's looking at the positive side of it. Where we want to get is where everybody's laughing, not just those few who took it up, isn't it?
Yeah. So do you think that from a small business context, that they may feel that it's for the corporates to make the real difference, and for them to make the real influence, because as a small business it won't be making that much of a chunk, or is that the right word, that much of an impact on the climate or whatever. What do you think, Mari?
I think that's a really good question, and I think no, don't leave it to big corporates. That it's the difference between moving a mountain and moving a caravan, really. With SMEs being caravans, they're much easier to move. I think you should be doing what SMEs are also much more community orientated, generally speaking. So I think that's where you need to make a difference within your world. The corporates will be penalised. That's at governmental level. They will be putting in restrictions. They will be paying the bills, and I think they will get hit harder and harder, whereas small businesses won't necessarily. You know, so I mean, it's sometimes it's simple things like just going paperless.
Yeah.
You know, going to a world where you don't send out invoices anymore is massive. When you're considering relocating your office or your factory or whatever, how long are the journeys to work? You know, how many cars are you putting on the road? I think the pandemic was very interesting for somebody who walks a lot, and you know, got to see empty motorways and just so few cars on the road, and the impact it had on the environment. It was very positive, and I know it's a very big debate as to whether or not people should continue to be allowed to work from home. What impacts are going to have on all sorts of things. But I think the world of work is changing. It isn't changing for all businesses. If you're making something, if you work in creating a product, you know, you have a production line, or you have lorry drivers or pickers and packers or people who are actually working physically to create a product, then no, it's not going to have changed massively. But in more intellectual businesses, and I don't mean to sound, you know, but where the product is a brain or a thought process, then, you know, why do they need to drive into a space to be together, at least all the time? And I do think that is going to have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, my views, because when I rebranded a few years ago, becoming more green as a business was something that was part of that process. And you know, we looked at offsetting the carbon footprint initially of just my business, but then as I run networking events, I thought, well, let's extend it to the venue and the travel mileage of the people coming to it. So it's a little bit of effort and time to research it and work out the, you know, all the associated energy usage and what have you. But for me to offset it for, I think at the time it was like 5 face-to-face meetings or something like that, happening sort of on a fortnightly basis, it's cost me £12 a month to offset the carbon footprint of that. So it's not a lot of money for me to invest to just to offset, you know, that my business's carbon footprint. So I guess that's one message out there to anybody watching this is, you know, do have a look at it. There's loads of calculators that works out your carbon footprint and then offers you solutions to invest in order to offset it. Often tree planting or sustainable energy, supporting sustainable energy and that type of thing. So yeah, worth taking a look. Jackie, it looked like you were going to jump in then.
Explain.
I suppose I need to make this point. I think that the offsetting carbon should be the last thing you do. I think it's, which I know it was with you, Paul. So, because it's about reducing the amount of carbon you use. There's no point in offsetting and planting trees if the amount you're spewing out the other end continues to grow.
Yeah.
So there's only so many trees you can plant. So it's seeing that as that last little bit. Carbon offsetting is that last little bit after you've factored in everything else. Like, do people need to go to work? Maybe the production line needs to go to work, but does everybody in HR and in top management need to be at work all the time? You know, physically there. So there's lots of things to look at. I think it's about taking a systematic look at that. And then if you've tried everything else and you're still producing more carbon or have issues, that's when you can think about planting a tree.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well made. Wish I'd come out.
And I have to tell you that
how dare you slammed up the host? That's outrageous. So
planters locally would endorse what I'm saying as well.
Yeah, but back to, I guess, the point I was trying to make. You know, it's, if you're doing nothing, it's probably worth doing that.
Yes.
And you know, there's, I think, nearly 5 million SMEs now in the UK. So if every one of those did something that was going to make a difference, then it would have an impact. You don't have to rely on the big corporates to do it. You know, it's just trying to motivate 5 million SMEs to do something. Mari, what are your thoughts on? Do you think the lockdown has had people focus more on their overheads generally?
I don't know. I think it sort of took people back, you know, to a simpler way of life. And I know that there's been sort of mass exodus of people over 50 from the workplace. So you know, the majority of those vacancies out there were actually occupied by people over 50 who had a certain level of experience. Although having said that, I read a post yesterday from somebody of a similar age who was really struggling to get, you know, highly qualified but really struggling to get work. So do I think there's a couple of things that really irritate me in terms of, we saw a lot of improvement and now we seem to have gone backwards. One of them is waste, just basic waste, particularly in public places. One of the strategies appears to have been to remove waste bins from public places. And I know in Japan, I think, their culture is to take your rubbish home. Because at home you have the infrastructure, the recycling. We don't have that culture here. And I think it is quite difficult. You know, if you go to a big event, generally speaking, they will have recycling bins. You know, this is for this is for that. Most people ignore that. And so they still have to sort the waste. And at that point, you think, well, is that actually being done, or is that just going to landfill anyway because nobody can bother to sort it? And I think, yeah, that's something that just irritates me. I think we need to make that more straightforward. I know from a waste collection point of view, if you're a commercial business, there's a cost involved. Obviously, you have to pay for your waste collection. So if you're having to pay for different types of waste collection, then you know that's going to also have an impact on you as a business. So that isn't encouraging people to recycle.
So Jackie, you obviously mentioned the Green Business Network. Do you want to say a little bit about what the intention of that is and why you got involved in that particular network?
Well, I got involved in it to learn. I had the sort of layman's knowledge of the environment. I'd watched all the David Attenborough stuff on television and everything. But what really made me decide to get involved was discovering there was plastic in my tea bags.
Right.
I had been putting my tea bags on my compost heap, so I had been adding plastic to the soil and spreading it all over my garden. So and that incensed me. But what got me most of all was I then set out trying to find out, could I get a tea bag without plastic in it, and found that quite hard to find that information. And so made a decision that I wouldn't use tea bags. I'd go back to what my mum used to do, which was make a proper pot of tea, and discovered that it was actually nicer. So having now discovered that there are tea bags without plastic in, I've reverted to proper tea and continue to do that. But I think it makes the point on how difficult it is to find out what really is sustainable in products that we use. And there's that lovely term greenwashing, where companies give a false impression that you're getting something more environmentally sound than you actually are. And I have a rule of thumb that it's what they don't say on the label that's probably causing the problem. Because most companies now, knowing consumers are looking at the labels and whether things are recyclable, you know, are getting wiser about that. But you still get it. Look on the label and see what they're not telling you.
Interesting. I didn't realise that about.
One of my classic ones with that, which I learned about, was buying cotton clothes. You think, oh, it's cotton, it's organic, that's great, you know, and then discovering that it emptied the Aral Sea to grow cotton. Where does your cotton come from is more important. So when it says it's sustainable, is it?
Do you think there'll be more of a move? So I know there's an FSC symbol, isn't there, that people put on their paper usage because it's coming from sustainable forests. So are there any other sort of badges like that that would help consumers to see that the source of whatever they're buying is sustainable?
There are all sorts of badges around, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
But one of the things that I subscribe to. Can I do an advert here?
You may do an advert.
There's a magazine you can subscribe to called The Ethical Consumer, and that does full reports and gives you really good, sound, properly researched information on everything from investments to your tea bags. I use that as my guide, you know, on which shops to go to, which products to buy. But some of it's common sense. If you're buying your water in a plastic bottle, you're producing a plastic bottle that's got to be recycled. It's got to have further energy put into it. So we make 1 billion plastic bottles every minute across the world, and we reprocess 9% of them.
Really?
Where are they all?
Yeah, it's quite shocking.
Yeah.
Quite shocking when you put it.
This is not something to play with. This is something to actually make some action. So when you go to your festival with your plastic bottles, perhaps you should go with something reusable.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So what are some of the things that small business can do then to start reducing their impact on the environment?
First thing is to decide you're going to, and you're going to make a difference, and then get some advice, get someone to come in and help you look at your business, at where you can make some quick wins. Because if you get some quick wins, then you'll get your team energized and interested, and you can often make a quick win that will have an impact on your bottom line, or may help you keep key members of staff, or just make the place nicer. So but looking for those quick wins in the first instance. But every organisation is different. But it usually starts with energy, water,
waste,
and what's going into your rubbish bin.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Mark? What have you seen in any of the clients that you've worked with that they've implemented under the sustainability banner?
Well, I suppose I would always say start with the people. And I mean, even, when Jackie was talking earlier about, it was really informative, Jackie, but also highlights one of the issues, that you think you're doing a good thing and then actually you're not doing a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's, you can't do right for doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I think so a lot of people become very exhausted by that, and they just think, oh well, I did my best, I was trying. So I think obviously I would start with the people in your business, and if that's you, then you have to make that mindset change. I would encourage the team to be able to state what you've achieved, how much you've recycled, how much you've reduced your energy usage, how much paper usage because I think then that gets people on board. I mean, in terms of clothing particularly, and that's a societal issue, that's not a workplace issue really. But with the advent of these new websites where you can exchange, you can sell things that people have worn once. I think that's really good, because using not buying new is a really positive thing to do as much as possible, as long as it's not, you know, a van driving 400 miles to deliver it to you. It's, you know, it is just kind of making those, like Jackie says, those small decisions. Clean energy, signing up for clean energy, but at the moment, that's not going to be as easy. And yeah, just, you know, encourage people to bring ideas to the table, because the more you make it a business thing, the more they take home with them, the more they might do it at home. I think, you know, the fact that we now have mixed, you know, we have segregated waste, you know, means that most people should be able to work out, you know, which bins things go in, so they know about recycling. But we just, this is a thing, talking about tea bags, I don't drink tea or coffee, so I save the planet that way. But my mother drinks tea, and she was here the other day. She made a cup of tea, she took the tea bag out and put it in the bin, and I didn't scream, but I said, oh, we don't put food waste in the bin. We don't, you know, that's not what goes in that bin, because that's, you know, part of that is recyclable, part of it isn't. You know, you have to separate those two things. You can't just put it in the waste bin in the kitchen, because the waste bin in the kitchen is A, for dry waste that can't be recycled. Everything else has to go into a, you know, an appropriate bin. So our kitchen bin is always the last bin to fill up, because it has the least in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, and I think, well, how many other people would think, oh, that can't go in the bin, or that, you know, that yogurt pot lid can't go in that bin, or it has to be cleaned, or it has to be this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think it's like all of these things. It's education, and I just hope that more and more our children are taught that, you know, new isn't the best, you know, and reusing. You know, my one of my children's about to move into a new house. Said new house is built to a more sustainable standard than many older houses. But and to be fair, they are having second-hand furniture. But I know a lot of people their age who everything is new. You know, it's new this and it's new that, and we've become very new orientated, and it's all about having the latest this and the latest that. You know, you just, when you were young, how long did you have your TV for? Like years and years. And now, you know, people are buying new TV every couple of years. So.
Yeah. Well, what about
that's the culture that's led from the companies, isn't it? Built-in obsolescence, but also built-in sort of the fashion, you know, stuff as well, isn't it? And that needs consumers can influence and have influenced that. I think there's a way to go yet, though. But we've always been able to buy second-hand clothes. We didn't used to buy them online. We used to go to the charity shop.
Well, and we still can do, and they're all still thriving.
Yeah. One of my friends has a segregated bin system, and I always get quite anxious whenever I've got to throw anything away, just in case I'm putting it in the wrong place. So usually, which bin do you want this in, just to make sure it's going in the right bit. So
I have another anecdote on that.
Go on then. Go on.
On Mari's point about getting your whole team behind what you're planning to do, I went to visit a company that I knew, and they had done a lot of work on the recycling, and they had a double bin, and one was for recyclable stuff and the other wasn't. But when I looked inside, both openings emptied into the same bin underneath.
Right.
There'd obviously been an attachment that kept them separately, which had been lost, and the cleaner had been putting just an ordinary bin underneath it, and nobody had noticed.
Crazy.
So, you know, it's very easy to slip the point is, it's really easy to slip back to old ways without realising you're doing it.
So, well, one final question before we wrap this up. Do you think that the generations below us are more conscious of sustainability, and therefore potentially when they are buying products and services, they will be looking at those businesses and seeing what things they're doing, and would choose to buy from those companies that are making more of an effort to be sustainable? Do you think that's something that generations beneath us are going to be looking for more, and hence potentially is why any business, and small business particularly, should be looking at what efforts they're making? Mario, I'll come to you first.
I hope so. And I think that's what makes it important from a business perspective. You know, is how is this going? You know, how is this going to affect you? Sustainability, as I said at the beginning, isn't just about the green agenda and recycling. It's also about your impact on the community and the wider world and the people that you're employing. And I think you need to look at where your business is going and the impact that is having, just not, you know, how that business is going to do. And yeah, do I think I hope so. I certainly see it within my immediate family. And I hope that that continues and gets a stronger and stronger voice. Yeah.
And Jackie, same question to you.
I think it's some. There are some people whose family and school and have really got behind the agenda, and you definitely see a difference. But you also look at what's in the shops and what people are buying in the supermarket, and yeah, there's a way to go yet.
Yeah, I think there is a way to go, certainly. Well, thanks for joining me today on this topic. So if anybody's watching this on replay, if they want to put any questions in the chat, then we can always sort of come back to them. We're here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. And next week we're going to have more of a finance slant to the topic, and we're going to look how should SMEs go about pricing their products or service. So that's what we're going to be looking at next time. So hopefully you can tune in then. So thanks again, ladies, for your time today.
Thank you.